Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Tonight, I'm going to be reacting to the Nazi invasion of Canada, World War II, on the Homefront playlist made on the World War II YouTube channel. Yes. If you guys want to check out my previous reactions to other episodes or parts of the on the Homefront playlist, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top here. Just click on it and be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as World War II YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
On February 19th, 1942, Winnipeg's Mayor F.H. Young addresses the citizens over the radio and tells them to remain calm and obey the instructions of their conquerors. Meanwhile, an incredulous populace is reading a public declaration of the death penalty for anyone who resists the German army. A Nazi occupation of Canada? Not quite. If Day is a demonstration to the public of what would happen if they don't open their wallets to pay for the war effort, and the Axis powers would win the Second World War. This is On the Homefront, a sub-series of World War II in real time. Today we will be talking a lot about money and what you need it for, which, as we all know, it makes the world go round. I'm Anna Deinhardt. As 20th century science and technology advances, this has a great effect on the character of warfare, especially the war in the skies. But the development of, for instance, military aircraft has also become far costlier since it began during the Great War. Instead of wood and canvas, more expensive metal airframes are used. Together with the advancements in engine and avionic technologies, that means that a plane now costs more than twice as much as 30 years earlier. Now, forgive me if I dabble in some basic economics for a moment, but we need to look a little bit at what makes a wartime economy extra problematic. As we shall see, wartime economics creates economic growth, but it's not like normal growth. Let's say, for example, it's peacetime again, and you make tractors. You sell the tractors to farmers who grow things that feed people who can now make cars, so that you can buy a car with the money you made with the tractors, and so on. But the industrial production of ammunition, military equipment, and arms is a lossy business. These products simply don't generate economic growth other than having to be replaced when lost. Like got shot and destroyed, blown up. In fact, on a macroeconomic level, they eliminate money. Interesting, right?
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, in our current time, America seems to buck that trend. You know, they invest a lot of money into their military, defense, and, many of the corporations that produce the military equipment for the American military also are extremely rich. They have a lot of money supported by the government and their arms sales across the world. So I don't know what's going on in our modern era time in terms of, the wartime economies. But definitely America is bucking that trend. Some other countries are also bucking that trend, maybe because they have natural resources that can back them up to acquire or to produce such technology. Especially like weaponry systems and aeroplanes and tanks and ships and so on and so forth in terms of military equipment and personnel, So in the modern era time, I don't know what's going on. Why is it that governments continue to pump so much of their own GDP into the militaries to the point where the societies are not able to cope anymore, They have high levels of poverty, or, the social ills within the country continue to fester because there isn't sufficient investment in that country, to sustain the people and their livelihoods. But somehow, some way, there's always enough money, or maybe not say enough money, but more than enough money for the military. Yeah. So Maybe in the past, in the 20th century, yes, making a wartime economy was a loss instead of it being a gain. But in our modern era time now, no. If your country is big enough, you have the GDP of almost half the world, it's possible. You'll make a profit. It's good business. Yeah.
The products get destroyed or destroy other things. They are used to kill people who would otherwise contribute to the global economy. For the nations at war, it means that their disposable income is decreasing while the costs are growing. So war is in fact a bad business, not the opposite. So how do you pay for it all? Give me your ideas. Borrow money from other nations? Sure, but it only solves part of the problem, right? And at some point you're going to have to pay it back. You will have contracts to do so. For instance, Great Britain is still burdened by the crushing national debt resulting from the Great War when the new war breaks out. Think of that. Vastly oversimplified, the problem with borrowing from another nation is that when you pay it back, that money leaves your national economy. Say bye-bye now. This is where the population comes in. You see, despite these problems I just outlined, a wartime industrial mass production does boost the economy, and in many places it even increases household wages. To tap into that potential source of income, higher taxes and, more importantly, war bonds are introduced to pay for the war. Look at me there. This also slows down inflation.
That is you, I think. Oh, wow. Okay. That's a nice poster.
Due to the higher household incomes by taking disposable income out of circulation. For now. In effect, the war bond is simply a loan to the states that will be repaid with fixed interest at some point after the war is over. Money that then goes back into the national economy. The war bonds come with the added benefit that they activate the wider population for the war effort. It creates a feeling of personal participation, of doing your bit, so to say. We are in this together.
And remember, gentlemen, save the farthings and they'll turn into pennies.
Yeah.
Save the pennies, they'll turn into shillings.
Yes.
Save the shillings, they'll turn into pounds.
Yes.
Save the pounds, they'll turn into aeroplanes.
Yeah.
Then we can give the Germans what they deserve. Boom, 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 boom. Remember, lend to defend the right to be free. And that means us all.
Remember, lend to defend the right to be free. That's nice. That's a nice saying right there. Yeah.
In Great Britain and its empire, systems like that have already been used to finance war efforts since the 18th century. It's done under a government program called the Treasury Redemption Scheme. This is now expanded with new efforts for specific needs. I will give you an example. The Spitfire funds. The Supermarine Spitfire fighter planes were designed in the mid-1930s. The high national debt and unwillingness to increase military spending has led to only very few having been produced by 1939. To change that, Lord Beaverbrook, an Anglo-Canadian business and media tycoon, sets up the Spitfire funds in early 1940. In just 1 month, he gets local businesses, city councils, and individuals to start raising funds for additional production of aircraft and ammunition. With £5,000, you can buy a Spitfire fighter and get to name it. Crazy, right? But you see, that can have a very personal meaning.
That's kind of like NFTs. Well, at least with this, it's a physical object that you have acquired. It has your name on it, and it's going to be used in the field of battle. It has far more significance and importance to it. Unlike NFTs, where it's just electronic, like photos or artistry, that it is claimed that you own it, but I'm not entirely sure. I mean, someone can just copy and paste it on a different site, and then they'll say it's mine, and have their names written on it at the bottom. So it's different in terms of that. NFTs are not really tangible objects. So yeah, it's kind of reminding me of that right here, with these planes being acquired by people, and their names are being put on them. Yeah, it's an interesting fundraising activity that this man has created here. Truly, very interesting.
For example, the widowed American-born Lady Rachel McRoberts of Tolland, Aberdeenshire, has already lost 3 sons during the war when she donates enough funds to get naming rights for 4 aircrafts. 3 are named after her fallen sons, and the 4th, McRoberts Reply. For Beaverbrook, it also has personal effects when his good friend Winston Churchill becomes Prime Minister and appoints him Minister of Aircraft Production. At the same time, in the US, not yet part of the war, preparations for similar things are already underway. US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's administration has already set the goals for wartime production by the end of 1940. A year later, when the nation is pulled into the war, Roosevelt activates what he calls the arsenal of democracy to put the economy into overdrive for war. The basic idea is to keep private individual cost minimized and maximize production during the war. That way, private, state and federal income is freed up to contribute to a production machine that is already in overdrive. For the households of America, it means tax raises and being called on to buy bonds. Similar to the Spitfire funds, the Treasury Department's Buy a Bomber campaigns enable communities and groups to buy naming rights to bomber and receive a picture of their aircrafts. So the personal feelings in our communities are suddenly engaged in a bigger way. This is just one of the many fundraising runs that the Treasury Department launches. To get the bonds sold, they launch a massive marketing campaign, which is pretty clever. Star-studded parades, short films as openers at the movies, endorsements by Hollywood and music stars, and much more becomes part of this huge promotion effort.
I wonder, is it still possible for the American government to do something like this in the present day? Bringing out their Hollywood stars and everyone else who's famous and well known in America to support the government in raising funds for the military. I wonder if something like this is still possible in our day and age. I know for certain if my country's government wanted to do this, it would fail flat, flat on the floor. No one's going to take that seriously. No.
The duty of each and all of us to contribute every ounce of energy and every dollar that we can possibly spare for the purchase of defense farms, which will carry us to victory.
The Treasury's War Savings Staff is created. They enlist schools, fraternal and ethnic societies, youth groups and women's clubs to sell war bonds together with a nationwide network of local field staff. No aspect of civic life remains untouched by advertising for financial aid for the war. Even Donald Duck stars in a short film seen by 32 million viewers. It features Donald's personal odyssey to file his taxes in order to help the government pay for the war. Obviously, Uncle Scrooge is still not giving him any money. Now, Treasury campaign focuses on 2 main themes. 1. The moral obligation of democratic citizens to counter Axis tyranny in order to sustain the American way of life. 2nd, that war bonds are savings that secure the family's financial future and slows down inflation at the same time. A favorite tool they use to bring home the messages is placing a picture of the all-American boy from next door in the audience's heads. He who is bravely sacrificing himself in battle for his country. To join him in that battle, to support his sacrifice, the people left behind on the home front should buy bonds. Triggering feelings of guilt and fear are also part of the programs. In the payroll savings promotion folder from August 1942, the reader is confronted with a family member facing the enemy without ammunition. A Cleveland Union member explains how they use fear and guilt tactic at their plan to achieve especially good results. The fellow would say he is a little bit hard up. He can't do it, and we would explain to him, not pressure, telling the fellow after all, like, you may have a son, you may have a nephew, or some of you a brother. Supposing you were in there and you were on the other side of the continent and you had no material there. You had your heart and soul in the fighting and you actually didn't have anything there to help you fight along. Wouldn't you think to help your brothers and start sending out ammunition over there to those boys to help them fight and then come back as soon as possible? In the end, though, surveys show that roughly 95% of the bond buyers cite patriotic sentiments like furnishing the government with money or to win the war, and such messages grow in popularity as the motivating messages to buy bonds. USA's northern neighbors in Canada are also carrying out a massive marketing campaign to sell their bonds. So, war savings certificates begin selling in May 1940. They mature after 7 years, are tax-free, and pay back $5 for every $4 invested. But not to inflate the budget deficit, each household can only buy $600 worth of war bonds. As the war progresses, this is just not enough. And in 1941, victory bonds, which are unlimited, are introduced. They have a longer and flexible maturity rate and back annual interest rates between 1.5% for shorter term to 3% longer term bonds. The victory bonds also come with a reorganization of the bond drives. The National War Finance Committee, NWFC, is established with 60 members advisory committee with representatives from industrial, commercial, labor and women's groups and so on. They help with strategy, advertising and recruitment of volunteers, whose numbers soon exceed to 100,000.
Wow, this is impressive organization to acquire people's money so that they can invest that money into weapons of war. And yeah, it's impressive, really. It is very impressive how they were able to, do this. I'm just wondering, about what's going to be the strategy to convince the Canadian populace that they should further invest their money into these war bonds. Are they also going to use the same sort of tactics that the United States of America were doing? Imposing fear and guilt and this sense of urgency that they should invest as soon as possible into these bonds so that, the Canadian forces that are fighting in Europe are able to have the support that they need. I'm just wondering about that. How fast did they initiate their campaigns? Yeah.
The promotion of victory bonds is the Canadian government's most extensive propaganda undertaking, which is going to cost it more than $30 million before the war ends. It's a mass communication effort using posters, movie trailers, radio spots, and advertisements in all kinds of newspapers and magazines. Local communities are given an official target of how many bonds should be bought in their region. Reaching those goals becomes part of local pride, and friendly rivalries are fought over how many bonds can be sold in a given period of time. But when rationing is introduced in January 1942, many people feel like they have already sacrificed enough and the bond sales stagnate.
They're going to find a way to push for more bonds to be sold. I can see it now.
The marketing response is to dial up the fear. But how? Pretty easy. By showing what an Axis victory could actually mean. For the Manitoba division of the committee, the method for that is the so-called if day. In a report, their public relations committee says, To properly reach the individual, the work of the Public Relations Committee must make the average man and women realize that our way of life can only be retained through personal sacrifice. Now, people must be sold the idea of reducing their personal standards of living in order to buy bonds, and at the same time to release their available saving bank deposits for purchase of bonds. So let's see what they came up with. Okay, the event begins late on Wednesday, February 18th, 1942, when suddenly German aircrafts are sighted. Air raid sirens sound the next day at 6 a.m. and a defense perimeter is established. The battle begins at 7:03 with the loud sound simulations of falling bombs and blowing up the city bridges. Soon, Canadian troops are in retreat under the pressure of the mock Nazi panzer forces.
Is this on radio or is it on a movie? Is it shown in the cinema? I'm just wondering because this is very intriguing. This entire story that Anna is busy, playing out for us here. So I'm just wondering, was this like on radio?
By 9:30, the battle is over and the German occupation begins. The invaders are portrayed by the young men's sections of the Manitoba Board of Trade with rented movie prop uniforms and painted battle scars for more dramatic effect. Under the occupation, there is a book burning outside the Carnegie Library. Important buildings like the police headquarters and the city hall are captured. High-ranking officials such as the premier, the mayor, and priests are arrested and interned in a newly set-up concentration camp.
Wow. This is... I'm actually surprised no one's actually tried to fight back at them, and try and shoot them these actors who are acting as Germans here. I'm just surprised that no one came out with their own personal gun if they have one and tried to shoot at them and say, hey, Canada's for Canadians and we're not going to be, surrendering to any German occupation. So I'm quite surprised that no one, took it overboard, if I can say that. Yeah.
The Nazis start ransacking residents by forcing them to give up their cars, and change is only given in paper Reichsmark. The simulation is over by 5:30 p.m. that same day with a parade down Portage Avenue that urges residents to, now it comes, buy victory bonds in order to prevent the events of the day to become real. As a climax of the event...
So people knew it was a simulation? Or they didn't, because that's what's important for me. If they didn't know it was a simulation, then I'm really surprised no one actually took out a gun and started shooting at these fake Germans. I'm just wondering about that. Because if they did know it was a simulation, then, it was a very convincing one, definitely then. They must have enjoyed themselves having this type of experience. Yes, it's terrifying, and yes, it's a bit, weird. But, they get a sense about what's going on in Europe. They get a sense about what would happen if the Germans came and invaded their country. It is a very powerful campaign that they are pushing here in Canada, definitely. But if the populace did not know that this was a simulation, then they had the shock of their lives. They were terrified. They didn't understand what was going on. Everything was happening too fast. And only towards the end are they told, buy victory bonds. If you don't buy victory bonds, this is what's going to happen to you guys. So it's amazing, really. This campaign is amazing.
The Norwegian minister to the United States, Wilhelm von Munthe auf Morgensterne, holds a speech at the Winnipeg Auditorium, painting a picture of the conditions in his home country under Nazi occupation. The culmination is to be that the occupied county has to buy its freedom by meeting a goal of $45 million in sold victory bonds. that goal is more than achieved when 105,038 Manitobans buy victory bonds for $65 million that day, with $37 million of that from Winnipeggers alone. The call to support the war financially in the United Nations is felt in all aspects of everyday life. It is hardly possible to evade the pressure to buy more and more war bonds. According to the governments, even birthday or Christmas presents should be given in the form of war savings certificates. How romantic. The Winnipegger Lügenblatt, that is the If Day edition of the Winnipeg Tribune, brings the need to buy bond directly into people's living rooms. Practically every home has unwanted furniture, musical instruments, books, sport equipment, garden tools, bicycles, and clothing which is no longer in use. All can be turned into cash, and the cash into victory bonds to defeat the enemy before he reaches our shores. And after seeing what that would mean, everyone who witnessed If Day will certainly think twice about not opening up their wallets. While talking about opening your wallet, you can contribute to our war effort by getting this. Australian World War II poster featuring Lil Me as an Aussie factory girl over at our collectible stores. Link is here. Now, don't forget that we also depend on the Timeghost army for our victory over ignorance. So sign up on Patreon or timeghost.tv. Make sure to subscribe and ring that bell.
Lend to defend the right to be free. Yeah, guys, that is it with the Nazi invasion of Canada, World War II on the Homefront, made on the World War II YouTube channel. War bonds, Spitfire bonds, buy a bomb campaign, or buy a bomber, campaign, really victory bonds, all of these measures and campaigns that the American government and the Canadian government were instituting to acquire as much financial support for the military campaigns in Europe was really something. It's just innovative in terms of how they shook the people and brought fear and guilt into their hearts, in terms of trying to get more bonds to be bought by the people so that they can support the military manufacturing sector, as well as the personnel that are on the battlefields. It's really something. It's different. I actually didn't know about this. I just thought that the governments of the day during World War II just had a lot of money, and they had their emergency funds that they would use for war. But I did not know that there was also a public participation where the public could buy bonds, and those bonds would translate into financial support for the production of these military equipments. That's really interesting. And with Canada and how they, approached this campaign in terms of having like a prop setup of an invasion of Canada by a group of Nazi or German soldiers, invading a small town and taking hostage of, very important people like the mayor, and also taking key positions over the police station, the fire station, wherever else as well. Really, it's it should be so convincing and scary, and it would bring people into an understanding about what would happen if Germany began their invasion of Canada. And really, it's a marketing campaign I don't think can be replicated in our modern times. I just don't see it happening in our modern times. The way we have social media, this will be unraveled in less than a second. People will know that no, the government is trying to fool us here. They're trying to take our money. Don't believe them. This is a fake, ploy done by the government. so that we can buy their bonds. They would people of today would just never fall for something like this. So yeah, it's really interesting and funny to find out how the Canadian government and other associations try to coerce people into supporting the war effort. And yeah, also like in America, how they brought in all the superstars and Hollywood stars and singers and everybody else to campaign for these wartime bonds. Really, I just don't know if it can be replicated in today's world. Maybe it can, maybe in some countries it's possible, but like I said before, in my country, I just don't see it happening. We don't take our singers and artists that seriously. We love them in their sector of work, as singers, as artists, as actors and actresses. Yeah, we love them in that sphere. But the moment they go into public discourse in terms of politics or military situations, then we just switch off. We have those different sectors. If you're a politician, you're stuck in that political world, and whatever you say there will tend to believe you first. If you're in the musician or the artistry sector and you're talking about politics or you're talking about the military, it's not going to fly. It's just not going to fly as high as if you're a politician. So yeah, I just don't see it working here in South Africa. I could be wrong about that, but that's just how I see things here. So yeah, it was really interesting to hear how the American government, the Canadian government, campaigned for their people to invest in these bonds. And yeah, the people invested a lot of their own money. They invested their savings. They invested almost everything that they own within their homes. There was a point where people could not even afford birthdays or Valentine's Day or any other form of holiday or special event for the family, because now everyone's investing into these wartime bonds. And really, it became even a community effort. It became a town effort. Maybe even cities, competing with one another to see who can invest the most into these bonds. So yeah, it's amazing, really. And also the campaign to buy your own Spitfire or buy your own bomber and have your name on it. That's just genius, really. That is genius. That was a genius ploy right there. And yeah, guys, that is it for tonight with on the Homefront playlist. Remember, if you guys want to check out the original video as well as World War II YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I'll see you guys. And I'll see you guys next week. Okay? All right.